So today is day number 1 that we are working on the Boosted Boy Kyle's hatch. The main goal is for this entire series, or the second part of the series rather. The first part I would consider is where I painted the entire hatch. The second phase now is where we are doing the engine bay, and we are not just painting the engine bay, we are going to be shaving it and painting it. It is going to look really good, and my plan is to show you every single step along the way. So let's get started.
And now, you're watching the Spring Break 08 channel of YouTube. Welcome to BodeVision.
Hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me yet again on another video. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what you can expect with these next few videos. Now, a lot of the time what I do, or what I have been doing rather, is I've been uploading once a week. That's every Sunday. So throughout the entire week I will film some of the main points. Some days I won't film at all because I'm just trying to progress the project forward. Because if I just film every single step, it's going to get really muddy, it's going to slow me down, and it's not going to be that interesting. But for a project like this, where I'm doing a hyper-focused task of working on the engine bay, I figured, why not? Let me show you every single step. There's going to be quite a few videos, even though this might only take me a week or a week and a half rather. If we were going to be just painting it, I could definitely have it knocked out in a few days. But the shaving and the fine detailing is going to be what I want to take my time on, and it is going to be what's going to eat up our time. So I think the first thing that I want to do, Kyle did a great job on getting rid of a bunch of stuff for me, but I want to get some more stuff off. I want to get rid of the coilovers. I want the subframe to come out. I want this front bumper to come out. Also this traction bar. Anything that's in here that is not going to be painted doesn't need to be in here. For example, this guy right here. Where is my tool that I'm looking for? I'm looking for this. This little hood. She's gone. She's out of here. We don't need that in there. And I actually got a box of these. This is that little hood prop clip. This is, I actually gave him this last time. I have a whole box, and I know I gave it to him because this one's super fresh. Most guys have a beat up hood prop, really nasty. So I think my plan is, let me grab my little rolling dolly. And she is right over here. We actually built this dolly years ago, and the reason why we built it was for painting engine bays, because I want to get rid of the subframe. And getting rid of the subframe means I can't move the vehicle. Oh my God, this thing is heavy. I forgot how heavy it is. Getting rid of the subframe means you can't move the vehicle around, but if you put it on a little dolly right here, you'll definitely be able to. So problem solved. So we got this big boy right here. Now it is really cool. I've been so used to working on trucks. I have my shop truck that I just finished up on. We did a square body C10 before that, and then the slam box before that. So everything that I've had in my shop for the last 3 projects has been obnoxiously too big for my small shop. But the Civic, man, this thing is nice because I can walk around it, I can keep the door closed, and I could do what I need to do. So it's kind of refreshing to get back into something that's small. I do like the old American trucks. I'm a huge fan of them, but this is really my roots. So let me see. Let me get the jack so that way we can throw that under there. So once we get this up in the air, then I will be able to pull out the tops of the coilovers. When the tops of the coilovers can come out, that'll kind of free up the subframe. And then there's bolts on each side for the subframe to drop out. Also, we have to disconnect the steering column, and I'm going to do that from inside the car. Passenger side, driver's side. Alright, so now we can get it off the jack and put it on the dolly. I like to put the jack on cruise control. Let it go down slowly. That way you can see where you're at. And don't let your fingers get pinched. Sometimes you got to make sure the cruise control is going up a little bit faster, maybe. Let's see. Ooh, I can't do that yet because it's in the way of the subframe. So I'm going to have to put it on jack stands for right now. Ditch the subframe. Once the subframe's out of there, then we can put it on the cart. Come on, man. right, so let's get the tops of the shocks so that way these can drop out. Goodbye. Run over here. Hit them with a 1. 1, 2, shocks are gone. And then we have our bolts for the lower forks that we need to pull out. Just like that. She's out of there. We got this side. That's one. That's the other. Fork from the shock on the driver's side. Fork from the shock on the passenger side. Tops of the coilovers. All right, so the next thing that I'm after is the steering column right here. All we gotta do is take out these 2 10s. You gotta take them out all the way. We got this one right here. And I'm gonna put these in that bin also. These are really distinguishable because of that little weird, kind of like a lock washer on there. So I'm not worried about losing those or having to keep track of them. Or I might even put them back in the U-joint itself, just so I can definitely keep track of it. We have the upper one, came free. Here is the lower one. And these guys are both the same size, so don't worry about keeping track of which one is which. Now that that's loose, we should be able to lift this up right here, get that out of the way. I'm just going to leave that guy right there. Now if you can see that tip hanging right there, that's just gonna come out when we drop the subframe. All right, so the steering column's disconnected. Let's go for these upper A-arms, or some guys refer to them as like where the camber kits go, because oh, dead battery, come on man, come on. So some guys refer to those as the camber kits, but it's really like the upper A-arm. But when you buy a camber kit, the upper A-arm actually allows the spindle to adjust the camber. So that's why some people call them camber kits, but I'll call them A-arms. So let's get these ripped out. 1 bolt on each side, 4 total. There go the driver's side. And we got the same situation on the passenger side. That's 1. This side is not looking too good. Me and you are doing an inspection on it together. I don't think it passed. I'll grab a new bolt for this one. Yeah, I'll definitely have to do that. I don't want to put anything back on the car that could potentially be unsafe. And this isn't even the same. I don't know what's going on with that. It's not the same type of bolt. So, I don't know. We'll get that figured out when we put everything back together. That's the 2 for the passenger side. Come on. So now, before we let that drop, I should have did this first, but it is what it is. We got to take out this brake line because we don't want it to hang on the brake line. So I got a flare wrench up top. And this guy right on the bottom. Let's break that loose. Okay, let's see if we can do it by hand. Oh yeah, we're doing it by hand. We're doing it today. And then this guy with the flex line, I'm just gonna pull it kind of up out of the way. That way it's not leaking. Then we gotta pull out this little brake clip right here. So I'll just get this under, pull out, she's out. Now this is good. All right, so the upper A-arm dropped out, the brake line is tucked out of the way, everything's just kind of hangling, dangling right there. Now we have some 19s. I don't remember if it's 6 of them, 3 on each side, or maybe 8, 4 on each side. I'll see. I know that there's more 19s right here than that need to come off because some of them is holding the lower A-arm on. So let's go ahead and get that ripped off, then we can drop out the subframe. Why are you blurry? You all right? Alright, so moving right along with the Civic right here, I got the majority of everything out of here that I'm going to be taking out of here. The heater core, I'm not gonna mess with the dash, so that can stay, I can mask it off. We got some brake lines here, I can mask those off as well. So I think it's pretty good for me to keep on working and keep moving forward with the progress that I need to make. So I wanted to start to get in some of the shaving process. So I think I'm just going to break this down in more workable areas. That way I'm not so all over the place with it. I wanna focus on the upper radiator support first. I'm gonna go ahead and do all of the shaving for that. I don't wanna mess with anything else, number one, because I need to keep track of which holes I'm going to be welding shut and which ones need to stay there. So instead of having little pieces of tape on there, because those pieces of tape can go away, I actually put a bolt in every hole that I'm going to be keeping. So we got headlights, we have radiator, and we have headlights, and that's it. Usually there would be a ground on here, usually something for an AC condenser. The grill is gonna stay, but that's easily distinguishable, so I'm not too worried about that. So the first thing that I want to do is every hole that needs to be welded, you have to remember to clean out the hole itself, because even if you clean the surface, you're not cleaning the inside of the hole. So I'm just gonna go ahead, go around, knock some of the paint off these guys, and I'm going to get that all knocked out, and then I will actually clean the surface. Let me show you what that looks like on here. So I just got this, my little zing zing tool. The reason why I call that zing zing. So all of these holes that we no longer need, we are just going to knock the paint off of them. I'm going to do that all the way around on the upper radiator support, and then get this all welded shut with my HTP 220 Pro Pulse welder. I can dial that thing down for this thinner metal, so that's going to be real helpful for me. Also, I like to have it dialed down a little bit if I'm filling in gaps. So I'll show you all that along the way. Let me get a little bit ahead of you here, start knocking out some of this grinding. I'm gonna put a mask on, and I'm not gonna wanna be talking with a mask on, blah, 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 blah. Let's keep making good progress, man. No reason to slow down now. Alright, so as you can see, we just made light work of this, filling in all of those holes. The big ones get a little bit out of control because I did not back them with anything. I was thinking about it, but to be honest, what I actually ended up doing was just running my welder on a lower heat with that circle. I just start at one end and I kind of work from one end of the circle to the other, start to build up that weld. Once the weld is built up a little bit, that's when you can really get into it, because you're then working on the weld itself instead of the thin metal. What gets really intimidating with engine bays, if you're trying to weld them up and you have a hole that's like, just say the size of a penny, and then your welder is running too hot, then you expand that hole wider and wider and wider, you feel like you're doing a lot more damage than good. But you just got to turn that welder down, and also if you needed to, you could back it with something, but again, it's possible to not back them at all as long as you have your welder turned down enough. And the welding wire that I'm using is a .030 wire. With my HTP welder, this welder's phenomenal because I can turn it way down and it's still going to weld really nicely. As you can see, I knocked out this front piece, welding it all in about 3 to 5 minutes, not long at all. All right, so right now we have the front in a really good spot. I mean, it's to the point where all I want to do is give a light little skim coat just over some of these grinder marks and just to kind of smooth it all over. I'm going to do a nice little skim coat, but the thing is, I don't want to start mixing up body filler until I have multiple zones that I can fill in, because if I skim out this whole thing, I'm just going to be sitting there waiting for it to cure. So what I want to do, well, not really cure, but I'm waiting for it to become ready to be sandable. So what I want to do is I want to have this zone ready to be skimmed, so that way the second I'm done skimming out this zone, then I can skim out somewhere else. By the time I'm done skimming out that somewhere else, I can come back to sand this zone. By the time I'm done sanding this zone, if it needs any more, I can skim a little bit more. And then after I'm done doing that, I can go back to the other zone. So whenever I'm doing body filler, I want to make sure I have multiple areas that I'm working, if multiple areas are required to be worked. If this is all that needed filler, then I just go ahead and do filler, and then we'd continue on with the entire process. So what I want to do now is get some other areas to the point that this area is at, and the point that I'm going for is ready for filler. All right, so let's see. Now that we have dusted 70 plus holes, I counted 24 on this side. I figured there's 24 over there. I counted about 25 across the front, 24, about 70. 70 holes have been welded, grinded, and smoothed over. So now all 70 of those holes need a little bit of filler over them. Now it's going to be relatively easy because I don't have to just do 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole. I just do this top edge, and that knocks out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. I do this top edge, that knocks out some of them. This area, this is going to kind of be like 1 area right there, 1 area right there. So in all reality, welding and grinding does take up the most amount of time, and I did not back any of these. I just worked across the hole. The hardest part about welding a hole shut is to just get started. You want to establish somewhat of a bead on the opposite side. Once you get that established, back off, let it cool, then you can really work on top of there to get across the rest of the pond. I don't know why a hole became a pond, but that's okay. So now that I have my grinder out and I'm grinding things, all of these studs off the firewall, we're gonna get rid of them too. So we got this one right here. These two are gonna stay for the wire harness. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see 9 over there, so I'm gonna go ahead and knock all those off. And then after that, I think we're about getting ready to finally mix up some body filler. Once I sand all of these areas down, you never wanna put body filler on top of unscuffed paint because you're gonna have adhesion issues, and just take my word for it at this point. So now that we got those studs knocked off the firewall, the next thing that we are after is we need to get rid of these holes because they are not going to be used for anything. So what I got right here, 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. That's just the largest area. And what I'm gonna do is come right here, kind of center this up, draw a nice circle around it. And then with this circle, I'm going to actually draw another circle just a little bit wider, so that way I can refine it down to my original circle rather than cutting it perfectly, risking having gaps, and you know what I'm saying. So let's go ahead and go get this cut out. It's actually pretty easy to cut a nice circle like this because it's an outer radius. It's a little bit harder to cut an inner radius with my shear over here. So let me get this drawn out. Then we'll get this cut out and then throw it in the bay. So we got my vise right here, my little workstation. One thing that I like about this is my vise, and then I have a bunch of modular tools that I can just attach to my vise, so that way I can kind of, you know, have a few different little work areas. So I got a couple things that just clamp right into this. So let's go ahead and get this circle cut out. I'm just going to run a little wider than the original circle. As I'm pulling down, I'm twisting at somewhat of a similar rate, so that way we kind of keep a nice radius the whole time. And then again, I'll just kind of grind this down with a flap disc to kind of refine it. But let's see, as I come down, I'm twisting it to make that nice radius. All right, so here we go, just like that. So let's get this cleaned up, then tacked in the engine bay, and then after that, I think we are getting closer to body filler. I want to just knock out all of the welding, and then I'll start working on my different body filler zones and whatnot. And I also have to knock one of these out for the driver's side. This one's for the passenger side, but I don't need to show you both sides. It's the same process for each one of them. So that hole is looking good. I did that on both sides. Another thing that I wanted to point out that I did is I went around and I did quite a bit of stitch welding, and I did that for two reasons. Number one, it's going to stiffen up the engine bay and the whole chassis a little bit. A lot of times in race cars, they will stitch weld the entire car, especially being a unibody vehicle. And number two, the reason why I did that is because we are going to come with filler in here just to smooth everything over. And the last thing that I want to do is to have two panels vibrating by one another underneath filler. Then it's more likely to fail and whatnot. So that helps out a little bit for two reasons. And also I sanded down the entire bay with 180 grit. I used 180. It's a little bit rough, but that's okay because this thing's going to get a filler primer all over it. Once the filler primer's done, I'm going to sand that down with maybe a 320 or so. 320 should be good for an engine bay. That's a little rough if you're doing the outside of the car, but for the engine bay, it should be good. So we've done a lot of good here. We've welded up all the holes. All of the welding is behind us. All of the grinding is behind us. So the next thing that we need to do is to get into some of that filler to really smooth everything over, but that is going to be in the next video. So make sure you subscribe so that way you do not miss that. Like this video, leave a comment. It helps me a ton for you to be interactive in the comments section, and I'll see you on that next one. I'm out.